right, welcome to Up Close and Personal. I'm your host, Carl Zymak. Today's guest is Judge Victoria Shackelford. The judge has served as Chief Judge of the 23rd District Court since November the 1st of 2021, when she was appointed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer after the retirement of former Judge Gino Salamone. She previously served as an Assistant County Prosecutor for Wayne County and was the lead of the office's arson unit. She also worked in the community prosecution and homicides units. Judge Shackelford earned her Juris Doctor degree from the University of Toledo Law School and her Bachelor of Science in Political Science from Eastern Michigan University. Welcome to the show, Judge.
Hi, Carl. How are you?
Very, very good. You've had a busy day?
I've had a very busy day.
Oh, well,
here we are.
Yeah, exactly. And here we are, your next busy thing to do. How's the adjustment going from prosecutor's office now to lead judge on a district court?
I think it's been going pretty well. It's been, a very interesting few months. There was, obviously, there's a transition period. I have a lot to learn. I'm fortunate that Judge Salamone has been so supportive. I took over the regional treatment court. He's run for some years, and he stayed on and mentored me for that transition so that I could kind of get accustomed to the role that a judge plays on a treatment court. The chief judge role, obviously, it's budget time. So I'm learning an awful lot very quick, but I have good staff over there that's made that as easy as it possibly could be. And just learning how to be a judge is certainly a different role than the one I did at the prosecutor's office. I was an advocate, and it's definitely a different hat than I'm accustomed to wearing, but I think it's going pretty well. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of support over at the court for the transition. So.
Which is fantastic. You're only as good as your staff, right?
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
I hear you. Tell us about the responsibilities of a district court judge. I know you and I talked about this question because we moved around a little bit, and there are so many different levels of courts in the United States, and like you say, you don't want to launch onto an hour-long diatribe of explaining them, but tell us about your district court role and how that fits in the judicial system. Okay.
I think district court roles are probably the most interesting. They're definitely the most linked to the community. And it's the court that most people generally interact with in a community. I handle anything from traffic tickets to landlord-tenant matters, misdemeanor criminal offenses, both from the city and from the state, civil matters under a certain dollar amount, and the treatment court, of course. So there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of different areas. For felonies, I handle the initial phase of a felony, which would be the preliminary exam, and that's where the prosecutor has a burden to show that the crime happened and this person probably committed it. It's not the beyond a reasonable doubt standard that would happen at a circuit court level, but it's certainly holding the prosecutor to their burden and ensuring that there's some evidence to go forward on a crime. So that's what our general dockets look like at the district court.
How busy is it?
Oh, it's very busy. Some days are busier than others. Mondays are a very busy day. We do our state docket then with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, and then on Wednesday is our city docket with the city attorney, and those are definitely the most interesting and busy days over there.
Are you able to share, when you talk about interesting, can you share that? Can you share those kind of stories if you're not being overly specific, or is that a bad question?
I'd be careful. If they're pending matters, I have judicial canons I have to follow. I can't talk about cases that are pending in front of me. Sometimes they're, amusing, or you get interesting characters in court, that's for sure. I think Zoom has really elevated that because people are a little more loose than they would generally be if they were there in person. But no, I probably think it's best not to talk about cases that are pending in front of me. I'm sorry.
Well, you bring up Zoom. Many organizations, businesses, industries have come out of the pandemic having been forced to do things during the pandemic that they might not have done previously. Are you seeing the same thing in your line of work?
Yeah, so I was at the prosecutor's office when the pandemic first started. And, I think we all went home for 2 weeks in the middle of March and thought we were going to come back to work and things were going to be normal, and that didn't work out that way. So the criminal justice system really had to think outside of the box. People have constitutional rights. Defendants and victims' families obviously want to have some closure. So how do we move those cases forward as expeditiously as possible given the circumstances? And Zoom was certainly one of the ways that the systems move forward. And I honestly think there are a lot of good things about Zoom, especially on a district court level. Most of the people that come in front of me, are people from the community. We're a working class suburb, and traditionally in court, if you had a traffic ticket even, you had court at 8:30, you might sit there till noon. You sit on a hard wooden bench, you have to take a day off of work or a half day off of work, you have to worry about who's gonna get the kids to school or who's gonna pick them up, and Zoom has really allowed the public access to the court system in a way that I don't think they traditionally had. I have people that take a lunch break or their break at work and sit out in their car and can come in and handle a traffic matter. And I don't see anything bad about that. I think the more access that people have to the system, the better it's working.
Customer service friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And just recognizing circumstances. And,
What makes the title Chief Judge different from your regular run-of-the-mill district judge?
Well, there's a Chief Judge rule in the Michigan court rules that applies to the chief judges, and it kind of lays out responsibilities on top of your general judicial responsibilities, budgeting, human resources, employee issues, contract negotiations with employees. There's a lot more to it. And, in terms of the day-to-day operations of the court, we have Deanna Warnick, our court administrator, handles a lot of those day-to-day operations. But determining court hours, docket management, all of those things go to the chief judge. So those are all new responsibilities that I'm learning and, hopefully doing a good job on.
And you're learning that Deanna is a great support vehicle.
Deanna has been instrumental in the transition. I don't know what I would have done without her.
Well, Deanna's good people. There's no doubt about that. Hard worker, knows her stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm also going to give a shout out to Amy Maudlin, who's my court recorder.
Right.
She's a lifelong Taylor resident, and she has. I don't know what I would have done without her.
Well, that's nice. That's really nice to hear from the chief judge.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I always thought, and you touched on this previously, I always thought that district court judges offer a unique view of their community, the communities that they serve. What type of trends are you seeing or have you seen currently from your seat on the bench that you'd like to share?
Well, I think I'm fortunate because I came in at a time right after all of these legislative changes had happened. So I didn't have to learn things the old way and then learn things the new way. I just kind of had the benefit of just learning things the new way. There have been a lot of changes in landlord-tenant law, due to COVID. There have also been a lot of changes to the criminal justice system. So in terms of the law, I think we see a huge trend towards openness, access to justice, and trying to make the courts as accessible to just normal human beings as we can. So those have been some changes. And you also just kind of get, you have a finger on the pulse of the community, and you know what issues are trending or what really matters to your neighbors and other people.
Anything that you see trending right now?
Oh, well, I think there's been a huge uptick downriver in the opioid epidemic and substance abuse disorders. So we've seen a lot of that in my time there. It's not unusual on one of my dockets to have 5 or 6 or even 10 people that come in front of me that, have larcenies or retail frauds or drunk driving offenses, and, these criminal charges are related to this underlying substance abuse problem. So I think it's really brought me awareness as to just how widespread the epidemic is.
Bothersome?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I know the police that when I've dealt with different police officers and the chief and things like that, they've said the same thing, that it's very troublesome. Can be very, very troublesome.
It is, and we're in a unique position because we have a regional treatment court.
Right. Exactly.
So that Judge Salamone started, that I'm doing my best to fill very, very big shoes on. But we have resources available at our court that a lot of other district courts don't have, and we can, the philosophy behind a treatment court is if we address the underlying issue, which is the substance abuse disorder, we won't see recidivism. We won't see, I can put someone in jail for 90 days for a retail fraud, but they're going to get out in 90 days and they're going to start using again, and we're going to see that same pattern and, criminal activity that affects the city, versus trying to say, let's find them a bed in an inpatient facility. Let's try and get them to therapy and get them to AA meetings and do drug testing or put them on alcohol tethers and try and really find a holistic approach to, solve, a problem that's just pervasive downriver.
When it comes to the substance abuse court and the programs associated with it, do the people headed into the program always, do they come through the system first and then the judge, whatever, puts them in the program or helps them into the program, or can somebody just come in off the street and get in the program?
Well, we have resources available. So I will say that if someone just walked in and said, I need help, I have a problem, certainly we have a phenomenal probation department. We have access to resources, and I can't envision a scenario where we would turn someone away. Yeah. We've had cases where in my time there, someone's been in warrant status for 2 years, and they walk in and say, okay, I'm ready. And, we make sure we get them in the program as soon as we can. It is a voluntary program, so they have to agree to be in it, and it's very intensive, and it really requires a lot out of them. They have to want, to participate. We can give you all the resources in the world. If the person's not willing to take advantage of those resources, what good are they?
You mentioned earlier that you were kind of finding your way as far as your involvement in the program. And I know, having conversations with Gino, I've known Gino for a long time, when we touched on these issues, kind of finding your way in something like that can be, I'm not going to say dicey, it's just different, I guess. Are you finding the same thing? How do you fit into the program?
Well, part of the program is that our participants, the people that are in the program, meet with the judge. We have these meetings a few times a week, and some of them are required to come more frequently than others, depending on how long they've been in the program. But there's 60 people, and they're human beings, and you have to find a way to connect with them. Part of the program is that relationship with the judge, especially when people are used to the traditional criminal justice system where you go in and you have a problem and the judge reams you out and then you go to jail, you really have to build trust with them. Right. So it's trying to find some common ground with the participants so that you can, have fruitful, conversations and guide them to the extent that you can.
On a percentage basis, how many do you connect with relatively easy and versus?
It all depends. I have a few that, are a little less talkative. I think the women in the program have been very receptive to me, and I just think it's different. They've had Judge Salamone for years, so I think I think they're intrigued to just have a female judge. But overall, I feel like the way Judge Salamone and I handled that transition was really helpful, because he stayed on for, several sessions, and I watched him, so I kind of learned his demeanor, his how he interacted with them, and then he stayed on with me and kind of watched me, and then we could, he could give me some constructive criticism or what he thinks, worked and didn't work. And I mean, he's an expert in the field. He really is. So having someone like Judge Salamone mentor me was just beyond helpful.
That sounds interesting, and I could see Gino doing that because he's just your basic good guy to begin with.
Yeah, very easy to work with,
Right.
very down to earth.
Yes.
So it was very helpful.
Let's go back to your days as a prosecutor for a second. You led the arson unit. You had previous experience in homicide. That all seems like really difficult work. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it was. It was
Okay.
very difficult work, but I loved it. I think it was a calling. People don't go to the prosecutor's office or do public defense work, honestly, for the money. It's something that you feel passionate about, and it is hard work. It's traumatic work. I've seen things that, I wake up in the middle of the night and think about sometimes. I've had cases that will never leave me. But you really, especially in homicide, you meet these families that have legitimately gone through the most traumatic event a family could really go to. It's one thing to lose a family member to, disease or your old age. It's another thing to lose them to, brutality.
Right.
And you really connect with them. You really make. I have a mother. She lost her daughter. This case was in 2018. We still text. I still tell her Happy Mother's Day every year. But one thing I will say that is different about that than what I'm doing now is doing that kind of work, especially the homicides, which is what I did for the longest period while I was at the prosecutor's office. Nobody ever really has a good day in court. If we get a verdict, and someone goes to spend the rest of their life in prison, you have two families that are essentially destroyed, and I can hug the mother and the father and the siblings and say, okay, we got you some justice, but that person's still not going to be at the Christmas table. It's some sort of closure, but it's not really anything to be happy about. And at a district court level, especially with the treatment court, you actually have days where you're celebrating. We had two women 2 weeks ago graduate from the program. When they started the program, they were homeless. They were both, in the depths of addiction. They didn't see their children. They didn't have a relationship with their family. They had nothing. They graduated together this past week, and these two women now have jobs. They have, coming up on a year or 2 years of sobriety. They have running vehicles. They have housing. They see their kids again. They're talking to their family again. And it's really refreshing coming from what I've done in the past to just see that, to see something happy come out of the judicial system. I'll talk your ear off, Carl. Tell me, wink at me when you want me to quit answering the question.
To be honest with you, that I find that fascinating because, rolling all the way back to when I asked you about the arson unit and some of these other things when we started down this path, you almost sounded like a soldier that came back from war. I mean, you get these post-traumatic flashbacks and things like that. It's difficult work. It's not easy work, and it's not the type of laborious difficulty. It can be mental difficulty. It can be really trying.
Yeah, it's emotionally
challenging
to say the least. But you know what? It's good work, and good people need to do that job, and people who care need to do that kind of work. So any sort of PTSD I might have from it was worth it to give those families what little solace I could.
Working as an attorney with indigent defendants, what was your takeaway from that type of work? Is that another satisfying situation?
I really loved that work. I did that for some time before I joined the prosecutor's office. I had the fortune of working on a treatment court at the 33rd District Court. So I was a defense attorney, but I was on the team of people for that treatment court program. So I still got to see some good news. You know, and when you do defense work, you get to know your defendants and what, a lot of them anyway, you know, and what I found interesting about it that I think most people know but don't recognize is the majority of my cases, these were good people who made a really bad decision. You know, and once in a while you come across someone and you think they're not, you know, they're a bad guy. They're not good. But the majority of the times you realize these are people that, you know, found themselves in a circumstance, especially when you're talking about some of the lower level, you know, misdemeanor work I did when you're talking about driving on a suspended license. Yes, it's a crime, you know, and then there's a penalty for that. But a lot of working people find themselves in positions where what are you going to do, not go to work?
Yeah, you better of two bad choices, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. I hear you. You're the first female judge in the history of the city's district court. I just turned 66. Women have made great strides in professional fields across the board during my lifetime. Is the glass half full or is it still half empty when it comes to the women?
Oh, it's half full. I mean,
always have, the perpetual optimist.
Yeah. You know, I was born in 1976, so
two years after I graduated. So
I didn't say it. I didn't say it, Carl. So I was born in 1976. The first woman was appointed to the United States Supreme Court in 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor. So you just think, in my lifetime, we now have coming up on, hopefully, you know,
a fourth
woman on the court. You know, politics aside, I think it's really interesting to see women take on such an important role at the Supreme Court. You know, there's always been men. It's always been men up until 1981 from the creation of the Supreme Court. So I don't think any woman could look at that and say the glass is half empty. We're really making progress in a lot of different areas. So, and I listened to Sandra Day O'Connor speak at my law school, and she graduated law school, I want to say it was in the 50s, and she said she was the only woman in her law school class, and, you know, everyone assumed she was there to get a husband, and, you know, and I went to law school, I graduated in 2005, and our class was, you know, half female, so
it does show.
Yeah, you see it.
Exactly. I agree with you. I think it is half full.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
And it's going to get better and better and better, hopefully. When it comes to judicial appointments, and you were an appointment here, take us behind the scenes. What's involved in that process?
It's a lengthy process.
Okay, all right.
So the position is posted, and any attorney can put in for it, provided you meet whatever the requirements are for that seat. You know, for a Taylor District Court seat, you have to live in the city.
Right.
And you have to be practicing for a certain amount of years. So you fill out a 40-page application and you send it off, and you try and get as much support from the community, other judges that you can, and you send in these letters of recommendation, and then you meet with the Michigan State Bar. They did a pretty lengthy investigation to make sure you know, the candidates are ethical, they don't have a lot of disciplinary history or things like that, of that nature. And then you do interviews with the State Bar. You wrap that up, and you sit on your hands for a month and wait for a phone call. And then I did a couple rounds, I think we did 2 rounds of interviews with the appointment committee for the governor.
Okay.
So lots of oddball questions that you really can't prepare for, and you just
probably intentionally so. Eh?
Yeah. You just do your best and you get through it.
Now, you were waiting on your hands, and you were waiting and waiting patiently. Did the governor call you, or did somebody call for the governor?
You get a call telling you. They don't tell you if you got it or not. You get a call, and they tell you they want to schedule a call. Between this time, it's like a 15-minute window.
Okay.
So when I got that call, I thought, well, who's so busy that they had to schedule a 15-minute call? So I was really optimistic, and Whitmer did actually call. Governor did call.
And for people out in the audience who might read about Gretchen Whitmer, may never, ever go face-to-face or have a conversation with a judge, or, a governor, what's that like?
Well, you know what? I was so giddy at getting the call. I remember I was supposed to get the call in between 1:15 or 1 and 1:15, and at 1:22 the phone still hadn't rang, and I started to kind of, just be calm, it's coming. And so I was just so excited to get the appointment that the phone call was a whirlwind, and I can't really tell you anything about it other than it was great news. I wish I would have recorded it, or I wish I would have had a minute to actually relish in that, but I just was so overwhelmed with the nature of the call that I missed it.
Well, that's neat. That's part of the story. Yeah. Did you always want to be a judge?
I always wanted to be in public service. Okay. I knew that when I went to law school. I knew that I was never going to get rich from going to law school. I knew I was never going to work at a big firm. And I was pretty cemented in that idea. And then over the course of your career in public service, I had done the indigent defense or the public defense work. I'd gone to the prosecutor's office. I'd worked my way up there to homicide and then to lead in the arson unit. And it felt like a very natural progression, especially having seen both sides of the criminal justice system, because I do think that's unique.
If you weren't in the legal business, what would you be doing?
I wish I had a good answer for this.
Okay.
I really don't. I'd love to be a Lego builder, but I don't know if that's like a real, I don't know if that's a good answer. It's probably not, but I think I'd be pretty good at it. I've got 3 boys, and I am really good at Legos.
Really good at Legos. How old are your boys?
I've got an 18-year-old, and the twins are 12.
Okay, already. Okay.
So, I can't really think of anything else I could imagine myself doing other than what I'm doing.
Nothing jumps at you, I take it.
I wouldn't have minded to have taught.
Okay.
And I thought, in my undergrad, I might go that way for a little while, but the law was just a calling for me. That's where I was supposed to be, and that's where I ended up.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all. We're lucky.
Yeah.
Tell us about your formative years. Where did you grow up? What did your parents do? Siblings, that type of thing?
Well, I was raised largely by a single mother. My mom, Linda, is a waitress. Okay. She worked very hard, very, very, very hard. My parents got divorced when I was 7 or 8 years old. Okay. My mom, a lot of people downriver know her because she's been waiting tables downriver since I can remember.
Really?
She's at IHOP now,
Okay.
so on West Road. But she worked really hard. She instilled a really good work ethic into us. It's just me, and I have one brother, Danny, who would be mad if I was on TV and called him Daniel or Dan. I grew up very close with my grandparents, and it was tough being raised by a single mom. I'm sure lots of people can relate to that. And my grandparents' house, my grandma and grandpa were instrumental in raising us. We got on the bus at their house in the morning. We got off the bus at their house when we were sick. Grandma fed us oatmeal and that address, my grandma's house, will always be home to me. Like that when people say, well, where are you from, or where'd you grow up? But grandma's house was always home base.
Wow.
So, yeah. So we we worked hard, good hardworking people. My grandpa came up from Tennessee. My grandma came up from Kentucky during World War II. And grandpa worked in factories, ended up retiring from General Motors. And my grandma worked in the cafeteria at the airport. And I remember pre-9/11, when I was little, we could actually go into the airport and eat at the cafeteria and visit Grandma. Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Can't do that now at the airport.
No, you can't. No. And Grandma got us lots of ice cream.
It's amazing how many people, their families follow that same route.
Yeah.
Because I remember my grandfather, my dad's father, came up from Wheeling, West Virginia, and then my father after World War II, and Mom followed him, to the Motor City, those type of opportunities,
Right.
that type of thing, and that's just the way it evolved at that point
Yeah,
in
well, the
time.
auto industry brought a lot of people up here. And,
Yep.
I think that somehow that's gotten a negative connotation. You'll hear people joke and say Taylor Tucky, and to me it's like that's something to be proud of.
Right.
That like we had these families who came from down south and moved up here, and most of us, most people in this area have a very similar story to that. Like they came up here with nothing, and built families and built lives, and the auto industry really gave them the opportunity to do that. And I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of in terms of that, or I don't get it.
Yeah, people like to use that term as kind of a slap.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I think that the Kentuckians who came up here and decided to make this an enclave, of theirs way back when.
Right.
They would probably laugh at those people.
Right.
Because they did it for a whole different purpose. They came up here to build a new life for themselves and things like that. And there wasn't anything. There was no drawback to it at that time.
And there's still not,
No,
but
there isn't.
it's always comical to me that people could say or think like that when you realize like these are our stories.
Right.
And these are
Right.
our family stories,
Right.
and that's how most of us got here, and why we're here is because of their tenacity and just willing to completely up and transplant for better
Absolutely.
opportunities. So.
Absolutely. You attended Eastern and then Toledo. Any collegiate experiences that you'd care to share?
Work hard, study hard, and try and make friends along the way, and try and make connections and enjoy it. I think college was, especially law school, was one of the greatest times of my life. I made lifelong friends, and I learned a whole lot. And I think that, learning to, when you're in the middle of it, law school, it seems so overwhelming and so, it's just hard, but I think if you take a second and just sit back wherever you are and take a minute to actually enjoy being there, because I don't think we do that enough.
No, we
And
don't.
that's what I would have done if I
Right.
could, if I could go back. I would have said, this is a really amazing experience. I was the first person in my family, in generations, as far as I know, to finish college and to go to law school. So it was like such an accomplishment, but it never occurred to me to really revel in the accomplishment.
Yeah, you didn't stop to smell the roses along
Exactly.
the way at that time. I understand where you're coming
Yeah.
from. Probably did the same thing as you did.
Yeah, we're just running by those roses.
Oh yeah, you're sprinting all the time, and you don't stop and kind of take a deep breath and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Greatest influence on you? I think I know the answer, but go ahead. What?
Well, I'll say my family.
Okay. Sounds like your grandparents had a
My
great deal.
My grandmother and my grandfather were just like such good people and just so loving to me. I learned my love of musicals from my grandmother. When you're sick, staying home from school, I probably have seen My Fair Lady 50 times because that was what she watched, and I learned to love it because that was my special time with my grandparent, with my grandma.
What's your favorite musical? Is it that one? Or?
Oh, well, right now it has to be Hamilton.
Okay,
But I go
alrighty,
back and
okay.
forth. But yes, My Fair Lady is one of my favorites for sure.
Where
The
did you
King
see?
and I.
Where did you see Hamilton?
I've only seen Hamilton on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay. You got
But
okay.
fingers
gotcha.
crossed.
Okay,
I hear
alrighty.
it's coming to Ohio in August.
Really?
So
Okay, alrighty.
I've got my fingers crossed that I'll be able to pull that off.
Tell us about your family now.
I'm married.
Okay.
My wife's name's Amy. We live on the north side of Taylor. We have joint custody of the kids. Well, my oldest son, Andrew's 18.
Okay.
So he's just graduated high school. He's signed up to take some classes at Schoolcraft. So, he's starting that journey. And then the young ones are rambunctious. They like, trampolines and wrestling and crawling all over each other and running through the house, and it's just a very loud, busy house, and we like it that way. And I have 2 dogs,
Okay.
Pumpkin and Jupiter. And Jupiter's my sweet, sweet baby. He's a Chihuahua.
A Chihuahua. Okay,
Yeah.
you've got little dogs.
Yeah, and a Yorkie.
Okay.
Pumpkin's
And
a Yorkie.
Okay, all righty, okay.
And they're cute as can be.
You should compare notes with the mayor. He's a big dog lover too.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's got a big, but he's got big lab, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, my Yorkie
Chocolate
thinks
lab.
she's big.
That's all that counts. It's all in your head. You're involved with Fair Michigan, okay? What is Fair Michigan, and what does that type of work entail that you're doing?
So before becoming a judge, I was the director of legal education for Fair Michigan, and Fair Michigan's an organization that advocates for women and the LGBTQ community. And what I really did is I went to law enforcement agencies and prosecutors' offices on behalf of the agency, and we just did training on, it's basically diversity training, and also just keeping an eye on the law, legal updates, what's happening in the law. And the idea behind it was your politics, when you're there to do a job, for instance, police, it doesn't matter what your politics are or what your personal philosophy is. It's you're there to solve crime. And as a prosecutor, I'm there to prosecute crime. So how do we best represent communities that maybe don't look like us or, don't have the same lifestyles or the same, live their lives the way we do? How do you interact with different types of communities to ensure that you are solving crime and prosecuting crime in a way that gives the system justice.
So you inform them of a lot of things.
I do. Yeah, it was interesting training. It was a lot of fun.
You also work with downriver families against narcotics.
Yes, and that's a passion of mine. And what I had told you, I did some previous work on a treatment court in downriver, in the 33rd district, before I went to the prosecutor's office, and now I have my own regional treatment court. So Families Against Narcotics, I'm on the board. We host monthly meetings, and it's just very rewarding work, and it's similar to what I said earlier about treatment court and being able to see these success stories. When you go to these meetings and you meet these people, you realize, and their families, they're normal human beings. They're normal people, and they're our neighbors, they're our kids, they're our aunts and uncles. So it's great work, and it's a good thing to be a part of.
As we wind down this interview, let's go back to your role on the bench. What are your priorities now for the court?
Well, I think, making sure that the court is accessible to the residents is the most important thing, especially coming out of a global pandemic. How do we make sure that, people like my mom who waits tables, how do we make sure that my mom can get in and pay her traffic ticket in a way that doesn't, affect our working families? How do they, get in? So I think that technology and utilizing technology to make the courts more accessible is really important. We just started a Facebook page. You should like it.
Okay.
Trying to get information to people in more modern ways. If you have jury duty, should you have to call the court every morning to find out if you need to come in, when you could literally go on Facebook and just check and it says no jurors today?
I hear you.
Or inclement weather, the court's closed for weather or whatever. I think using technology to get information out is really important, because that's just how it is now. Another thing that I'm very proud of at the court, and I want to continue, is the collections department. And I say this probably 10 million times a day, on my dockets, is if you can't afford to pay that ticket all at once, because a lot of people can't, we'll set up a payment plan with you. We'll work with you to come up, what can you pay on a weekly or a monthly basis? How can we help you, keep your driving license and keep, it shouldn't always just be punitive. And I'm not talking about, violent crimes or things of that nature, but generally speaking, I think working with people who find themselves in front of us to find a way to allow them to pay things off in a way that works for them and their family is something that we have to do. It
also helps give them a little dignity at a time when it's being kind of stripped away from them by the system.
And if you can't, if you say you're going to pay it by the end of the week and you can only pay half of it, call and let our collections clerk know. Let her know that you had to get a new tire, or something came up, and let's find a way, to not have you go and show cause status or get extra fines and fees added on. Let's try and find a way to keep that ticket where it was.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We're hard into City of Taylor budget season, just like a lot of other municipalities are. How does the court budget work and interact with the city's budget? Because they're a little bit different and a little bit the same.
Well, the city, I think, has an overall budget with a lot of different departments. We're just, the district court's just one of them. So, we draft up our budget at the court of what we anticipate we'll need. And, we have meetings with the mayor, and then I will be entering my first study session with city council in the weeks to come. So I can't tell you how that looks yet, because I don't know. But it's been an interesting process so far. Mayor Woolley has been fantastic to work with. We're both new, and I know he's been on city council and certainly has a lot more experience in terms of budget than I do, but it's still just been a really congenial, friendly experience so far of how do we, best spend money and how do we best represent, the residents of the city.
Sure, exactly. Last question. You're a young woman. What are your aspirations moving forward?
I'd like to get as involved in the community as I can. I don't anticipate going anywhere. I'm very happy with a district court seat, so I don't have ambitions of doing this for a year or two and then going to circuit or the Court of Appeals. I plan on staying right here where I live, and it's a nice 6-minute drive.
Well, in all honesty, that would if you left, that would kind of break tradition, because when you look at the history of the court, I mean, they stayed. Heck, Anthony. Is Anthony still working?
No, he's not. But I did just see him at Rotary.
Okay, yeah, because he worked for a long time.
Yeah.
So did Judge Sutherland. Gino, you're never going to get rid of.
Nope. And Judge Sutherland still comes in and helps once in a while.
Already.
Yeah.
Okay. Those guys are just fantastic gentlemen, but very small coffee collection, and you are the first female. A credit
first female in the house.
A credit to you.
Yep. Very exciting.
Well, hey, it's been a pleasure.
Yep. Thank you,
we got to do this again.
Yeah,
maybe on some other subjects. We'll get Gino in here and talk about the substance abuse court and things like that.
I think that'd be great.
I think that would be fantastic. That's about it for our show. Victoria, thank you for coming on. It's been a real pleasure to have you here, and continued success at the district court level. For Samantha Rickert, behind the scenes, I'm Carl Zymak. Thanks for joining us on another Up Close and Personal. We'll see you next time when we feature another one of Taylor's community leaders.